on page 13. Organizational culture and style. There are 4 factors that always determines what that culture looks like. If you want a culture of productivity, you've got to create an environment of productivity. If you want to achieve health, you have to create a culture of health. And there are 4 factors that tend to shape what a culture really looks like. Firstly, is the company's policies. Also, its values. Its work environment, and its management style. Those are 4 factors that tend to shape what that culture looks like. And based on the shape of the culture, that determines then what the organization is able to achieve. Just above that on page 13, it talks about progressive elaboration. It's clarifying the plan as data becomes available. At the start of every project, there are many things that you just will not know. But that doesn't mean you stand there and you freeze up. You plan as best you can, and as data reveals itself, you further clarify a plan. When an airplane flies, 90% of the time it's off course, but during its flight, it makes several corrections, small corrections, and eventually it homes in on its final destination. Just prior to that is page 10 and page 11. The project life cycle is a sequence of phases that are executed in order to accomplish your objective. Those phases can be sequential, they can be parallel, or they can be iterative. But the main thing is that they're separately planned, separately controlled. And the graph on page 11, it nicely highlights that duration of a project is proportional to risk. The longer your project is, the more risk there is. The shorter it is, the quicker the rate of descent of risk. Because risk is something you can never really get rid of. But what you can do is hasten its rate of descent by shortening the project, and you do that by breaking the project up into phases. Also, the other part is that the influence of a stakeholder, or the ability of a stakeholder to throw change into a project, that steadily falls as you get toward the end of the project. And the reason for that is because it becomes more expensive as time goes on to implement those changes. A stakeholder is anybody who is involved in or affected by a project. And they're going to ask you this on the exam. They're going to ask you which of the following people is sometimes a stakeholder and which of the following people is always a stakeholder. They actually give that to you. It's kind of like this. I had an electrician working with me on a project, and we were going to change a 40 amp breaker, which is pretty simple. 40 amp breakers, I mean, it could kill you, but you know, it's not all that bad. And the guy goes up to it, and he's about to change it out. And I said, Richard, don't you think we should shut the power off before we change this breaker out? He said, we don't need to turn no stinking power off. I've been doing this for years. I said, I really think we should turn the power off. He said, who's the electrician here, me or you? Okay, go right ahead. And as he's about to touch to break it out, so he's about to touch it, he stops and he says, wait. But if I get electrocuted, don't touch me. Otherwise, you're going to get electrocuted as well. I want you to take that stick over there. I want you to hit me with it, should in case I get electrocuted. I said, Richard, you don't have to wait for it to get electrocuted for me to hit you with a stick. I'll hit you anytime. But the thing is that if I were to touch him, I would also get electrocuted. Not as bad as him, but I still would feel a shock. And that's exactly what this is. As long as you touch the product of the project or the project itself, you're always a stakeholder. As long as you touch the project or the product of the project, you're always a stakeholder. Anybody who touches you is sometimes a stakeholder. That's one of the main things to remember on the exam. If you touch the project or the product of the project, you're always a stakeholder. Anybody who touches you is sometimes a stakeholder. For instance, you're the project manager, so you're always a stakeholder. But your family is sometimes a stakeholder. Your customer is always a stakeholder. But your customer's customer is sometimes a stakeholder. They're not always affected by the project. They're only affected by the project intermittently or through you. There's another question I'm going to ask you. They're telling you, your customer says it should be this. Your expert with 20 years experience says it should be this. Now what do? Don't go with either of them. Bring these two together Let them talk it out, and whatever they decide on, you do that. Whenever the customer is up against an expert, he doesn't get his way automatically. You have to bring these two together because one knows what he's talking about, and the other one holds the purse. Both have valid reasons for voicing their concerns. Don't go with either of them. Bring these two together, facilitate the process of coming to a decision, and whatever they decide, you do that. There's another question you're going to get. What if there's a difference of opinion between all your stakeholders? The team members are saying one thing, the activity owners are saying something else, the sponsor is saying something else, and the customer is saying something else. Now what do you do? Fail. Yeah, get out of there, right? The answer would be, always resolve the matter in favor of the customer. Whenever there's a difference of opinion between all stakeholders, always resolve the matter in favor of the customer. You've got to be able to consolidate all your projects under one umbrella. In the 21st century, management effort is very, very expensive. And as such, you've got to be able to benefit from economies of scale, and you do that by means of consolidating all your projects under one umbrella, and that's called the PMO. The Project Management Office is where you centrally coordinate your projects, and you also ensure conformance to guidelines and policies. Projects and programs and operational work all geared toward a strategic objective. But the thing with portfolios, its contents are not necessarily related, yet they're necessary to achieve the objective. A program is a handful of related work or related projects. Project management. I have no definition of what project management really is, but as far as PMI is concerned, project management is the application of tools and techniques and methodologies to activities in order to meet requirements. Never try to exceed requirements, because every time you exceed requirements, you have to perform extra work. And work carries two inherent things with it, risk and cost. Two things you don't need to be injecting into the project. Just prior to that is sub-projects. A sub-project is a strategy for overcoming three problems. You may have where the scope is very large, or there's a lack of consensus among the stakeholders, or the environment is very undulating and unpredictable. As such, never attempt a project or a large project in one shot. Always try to attempt it in small spurts. And you do that by breaking the project up into sub-projects. It's a major project broken up into smaller initiatives. And lastly, a definition of what a project really is. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to accomplish a unique objective. That means projects are very finite things. They have a definite start and have a written in stone end, and they're only used to accomplish something that you have never tried before. So the first time you do something, it's going to be a project. But the next time you do something, the same thing is going to be a procedure, because you've walked that road before and you know what's involved.